Hey, Brass Facts here. Now, for something completely different. I often get asked, hey, Brass Facts, what do you think might cause shit hit the fan in our lifetime? And my answer is, well, a lot of things, but this particular video, my pet theory if you want to call it that, well, that's the whole point of this video. The collapse of American hegemonic order, or as I put it previously, the collapse of liberal international system, Pax Americana, whatever it means, and the consequences for you, yes, you, and your continued existence on this little shitty rock. So, what the hell is Brass Facts talking about? What's a hegemon? Is this about that one Ender's Game book? No, it's not. Though, that would probably be more interesting. I love that series. Anyways, buckle up. This is going to be a dense one. A lot of what I could say could just be summed up as lol economic collapse and call it a day. So, this video is going to be very much about the journey, about the why and the how. So, if you're not really about that life and you're not ready for a crash course in poli-sci, you may want to skip this one. Dog footage still at the end. I'll make it extra long to make it worth your while. Oh, by the way, if you know anything about this subject, sorry, you're going to find it probably pretty painful and maybe even inaccurately condensed to fit in a shortish relative video. As we go through this, be sure to understand hegemonic theory, which is what I'm describing here today, is a offshoot of the realist school of thought, which is very much a human construct aimed at trying to explain how state interacts at the global level in a pretty simplified manner. The real world is much more complex than really any theory, and the real world loves deviating from what bougie dudes in ivory towers came up with, so keep that in mind. But the key takeaway here is that a lot of world leaders, either subconsciously or consciously, follow realist or realist-derived ideology, which means the theories born from it will play out to a degree, regardless of how valid. Bringing back an oldie, this video is sponsored by Nightline. Nightline is all about providing night vision to you at an affordable cost with the peace of mind of having an individual that can help you throughout the process, including picking out tubes. Simply pick out a tube on their website, call them up, and they'll handle the rest. A real standout from Nightline is their NL914. This is a variation of the PVS-14, shares most of the same dimensions and design, but importantly uses a unique housing that takes both AA's and CR123s. This might sound like a gimmick, but when you're in the field having the ability to access multiple battery types, especially the lithium CR123 that is very ubiquitous in tactical gear, makes for a much more robust logistical chain. Just the other night, I was doing a night ruck shooting more, and all of my AA batteries were depleting and kind of shitting the bed, so I popped in some spare CR123s that I had lying around for my flashlights and got back in it. And then I probably dropped the PVS-14 off a rock, but that's neither here nor there. Regardless, go check out Nightline the next time you're interested in buying night vision and tell them Brass Facts sent you for a whopping 15% off. To understand American hegemonic order, and obviously the results of its downfall, we need the preface on what the world was before this order. Don't worry, we'll get to defining stuff soon enough, stick with me here. In this pre-1945 world, there really exists one objective truth that trumps them all, and that is survival, obviously, but at the state level. Continue your nation's existence at all costs. The state exists first, second, and really third to protect and ensure the continued existence of the state itself. I cannot understate this. We exist in a timeline where the annihilation of a state is very rare, and there are many nations that dedicate themselves to things other than protecting themselves with tiny militaries for their size, so on and so forth. You know who I'm talking about. But historically speaking, weak nations get consumed, subjugated, and potentially worse, enslaved and partitioned. Trust me, that is not the best experience. Go ask the Poles, go ask the Chinese, or presume any of the nations that have been long lost to the pages of histories. It's culture, a footnote on page 347 of your AP history class textbook. There exists no greater shame, no greater loss than the destruction of your nation, your culture, and people. Thus, for the entirety of organized human history up to this point, the purpose of the state, first and foremost, was to continue its existence by whatever means necessary. This is very odd when we look at history, especially the pre-1945 world, because it is jam-fucking-packed with war. States cannot get enough of it. They're fighting for everything, anything, and a lot of times what appears to be nothing. This seems very at odds with the statement of states simply wanting to survive above all else. So why is this? Heavily condensed down, it comes down to two mostly agreed upon phenomena in geopolitics: the security dilemma and anarchy. By pursuing the most optimal path for self-preservation, we find in a cruel twist of fate that the conditions are created for war. In a more blunt way, I build my military for defense, my neighbor must build a equal or stronger military because he cannot ever know if I will turn that military against him one day. I see his build up his military, I get nervous. He gets nervous, he builds up his more, we have an arms race, it's a complete mess. This is extremely pronounced in the parts of human history where offense is very much favored over defense. In the real world, countries ebb and flow in power due to technological leaps, economic downturns, internal struggles, whatever. Meaning there are occasions where one side, in a relatively even matchup, will often be advantaged in the short term. Thus, in one of my favorite books on the matter, we get the tragedy of great power politics. While very simplistic, it points out that in the singular pursuit of surviving, combined with the desire to prevent war, we create the ultimate conditions where war is the only logical option. If you don't attack now, you are leaving the door open to a future where your enemy is now in the advantageous position and can choose to annihilate you. So your only option left is to attack now when you have the clear path for an easier victory. One would simply think that everyone simply shake hands and agree not to do war. But without a higher governing body, these periods of peace never last long, as rule breakers are always rewarded and rule followers are often punished with complete destruction. If you've ever played something like Territorial IO or any other similar game, you understand this concept implicitly. Unfortunately, this world kinda sucks. I don't think I need to remind you of the scale and devastation wrought in war, especially industrial great power wars. It's just not a fun time. It really is the darkest timeline, with that timeline being a lot of human history. But as you might have picked on, we don't really exist in this world anymore. Okay, with that we're armed to talk about the subject of the video. Remember, because there is no greater arbitrating power above the state, there is no trust. We end up with many of the scenarios described where war ends up being the smartest option for survival. But what if we can get someone to arbitrate over it all? It's now 1945. War has just ended and there exists a supernation. A hegemon, if you will. Hey, there's the thesis. One the world has never seen at this scale before. One that can realistically never be conquered by its landmass position as a supersized island alone, and thus doesn't really need to fear invasion and can focus its majority of its forces overseas. One that has the largest economy, one of the largest populations, the largest amount of resources, owns the world's most effective, largest military, and also happens to own the only nukes at this time. So large is this comparative advantage that America could now become that global power, solving both the prisoner's dilemma and anarchy in a single swoop. Now, it wasn't fully opposed, the Cold War and all, but functionally speaking, especially in the later post-Cold War era years, and basically right from the get-go for all the Western sphere of influence nations, America was that big daddy, the alpha, the omega. America in a single instance has solved the tragedy of great power politics. Let me give you some examples. In 1945, Japan is not very popular for some reason, and multiple nations in that area have every reason to obliterate it to prevent it from ever becoming the threat it once was. Now is the time to strike where it lies in ruins. Historical precedent says that is exactly what should happen. Japan should be divvied up. But the United States comes in and simply says, no. Interestingly, it works in reverse as well. China, who under normal circumstances would be obligated to prepare for the next war with Japan, because you bet your sweet ass cheeks would have come, doesn't. It's very convenient not to have to spend a shitload of money on your military, instead to be able to supercharge your economy. And remember, Japan's economy was supercharged and was very much positioned to be a world superpower with their economic miracle. Many of you might have forgotten, but Japan was once viewed very similar to how China was now, on track to outpace the United States. A military built off of the second largest supercharged economy in the world would have very much had other nations in the region create a military to match it out of fear, out of that unknown of not being able to trust what Japan would do with this military. And we'd ultimately probably see a large alliance arrayed against Japan and, of course, a arms race. America is both defending Japan from China, but China from Japan. America now as the world police, a term hated nowadays but still very relevant, has solved the prisoner's dilemma. Nations just want to exist, and America has ensured that nations within America's sphere, while still not trusting each other, do not need to fear each other during their weak moments. Why? Because America will bitch slap your ass so hard if you attack one of her ducklings, and American ducklings stretch for most of the globe. The results speak for themselves. There has not been a great power war since 1945, objective fact. The closest we've seen are proxy expeditionary wars during the Cold War. Taking it a step further, so long has this era of peace been present, so long has the world coddled under the promise that America will be there should anything big ever kick off, that most major powers are only spending about 2 to 5% of their GDP on their military, a fraction of what has historically occurred. China is obviously a huge exception, but that's recent, and that's also its entirely own video. So why is America spending so much blood and treasure to do this? As mentioned, America herself is mostly impervious to destruction via invasion, so why does she need to prevent wars overseas? There are many answers here. American exceptionalism, prevent nuclear proliferation, prevent the Soviets from ruling the world, that was a big one, but there's a number of them. All of them are partially true, but somewhat miss the full picture. The reason why America plays world police is because she likes money. And America wants the world to buy her shit. And America wants to buy everyone else's shit. And you can't do that in the world that I described earlier. So, a set of rules were created after World War II that all nations in the American sphere or Western sphere play by. The UN, Bretton Woods, and more, all technically a global effort, were really just created by Americans under American ideals to kind of perpetuate this new system America wanted to create. The Allies helped a little bit too. Once fully established, if you play by the rules, you get access to a global banking system, the ability to instantaneously trade, new global trade routes, access to the US dollar, shipping lanes, and more. All of this, protected by the US military 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Now you can kind of sort of understand the impetus of why America comes down so hard against anyone that goes against this system. Now, there are absolutely blemishes to this. Industrialization, or should I say globalization and its consequences, do have some downsides, serious ones at that. And there are certainly nations that get way less of the pie than others. There are winners and there are sort of winners and then there are losers. But in aggregate, you are living under a rock if you think globalism isn't massively beneficial for humanity and all that partake in it. This is the reason why America attempts to maintain such a global reach, and why we seem to shove our nose into so many affairs. There is absolutely both a critical mass of nations required to maintain this global system, as well as the requirement of an unquestionable perception of American dominance as a whole. If any of these things fail, the system begins to crumble. Which brings us to 2024. The system, very slowly, is beginning to crumble. It's hard to really point to any single reason why. Some of it has to do with perceived American decline. Some of it probably has to do with actual American decline, relatively speaking. Some of it probably has to do with the increased desire for America to pack up and go home on both sides of the equation, that we've done enough and it's time for the rest of the world to pick up the tab. Some of it has to do with the American people being sick and tired of dying or paying for conflicts, many of which really do nothing to better the world or uphold the system we've created. Ultimately, it doesn't really matter how or why. It simply matters that it will occur or will occur at some point. It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And whenever that day comes, it will mark the next chapter in humanity. What does a world without a hegemon look like? Well, it looks like the eve of World War II. It looks like the eve of World War I. It looks like all of the great wars in Europe. Gone is the security against your neighbor. Gone is endless funding. Gone is shipping lanes protected without cost. Gone are surface-sized action groups that can show up and level an entire continent within 48 hours to defuse any situation. Gone are iPhones that go halfway around the world and still end up cheap as shit. And when I say iPhones, it's a metaphor. Everything is going to go up in price and availability. This will be on a similar tier to the collapse of the Bronze Nations or the implosion of the Roman Empire. Events that in their region, in their what essentially amounted to the entire world for them at the time, completely changed their way of life, completely changed the standard of living, completely changed the paradigm. The current way of life that we enjoy right now, the cost of living, the comforts we enjoy, exist off of the back of this system. And with America retrenchment, willing or not, that system cannot continue to exist. Too much of our current world is built on the assumption that an ocean away is cheaper, faster, more efficient than a factory next door that wants $5 more an hour per worker. We can only hope that it'll be a gradual process over time, that other systems come up to replace what exists currently, that regional powers kind of step in and keep the system going long enough for a new system to take its place. But it is just as likely that this will be sudden and violent. This is the shit hit the fan moment. Complete and utter collapse of American hegemony and everything that it enables. Alright, that's been my spiel. Remember, this is mostly academic theory, pretty good academic theory, but theory nonetheless. And that you should view this as a general 50,000 foot overview and a guide of what may happen. But really, the details, the circumstances, the timing, and more is all up for grabs. For every theory I told you here today, I can offer a counterpoint and a counterpoint on top of that. The point is not to sell you on this idea, but to show you a potential vector towards an event. For those that have completely lost the plot, here's a quick summary. The world that exists without any hegemonic-like power is brutish and war-prone. We exist currently in a bubble in human history where there exists an entity that allows for the largest period of peace and prosperity. However, that may be coming to an end. While there are many scenarios where we find regional hegemons take over, or perhaps America shares hegemony across the world and the world is divided into subregions, or perhaps a new system comes in and replaces the one we're in. Wait, hold on, is this the plot to Command & Conquer General Zero Hour? Yeah, it actually is. It's just as likely that this whole stack of cards comes crashing down to the likes of something we have never really seen in human history. Whew, okay, that was a tough video. Let's not do that again for a while. Thanks for watching, and thank you for listening to this whole thing. I promise I'll do more gun content soon. By soon, I mean like next video. It's a gun channel after all. And yeah, thanks for watching. See you guys in the next one.
Darling, come here. Come here. That's a good girl. You're such a pretty girl. Look at all these tufts. So many tuft options. So many tufts. What if I go for one of the big tufts? No? You don't want that one? Smaller tuft? What about the big tuft? Come on, let's go for the big tuft. You got a big tuft? That was a good one. Come here. Come here. Come here, girlfriend. Come here, girlfriend. Oh, you're so pretty. You're so pretty. You're so pretty, and I'm interested in you for reasons other than your tufts. I know. Oh my goodness. Wait, what's that over there? What's that? No, it's nothing. It's nothing. Well, we'll over to the other side. Let's look at your other side for no reason. What do you got? What do you got on the other side? Yes, you're such a good girl. Okay, but wait, what's this? But wait, what's this? Is this a? No, that was nothing. Let's try the other side. So pretty, so sweet, so clean. But undeniably with tufts. So undeniable, these tufts, darling. No, seriously, you gotta sit for this, because I don't even know if you're gonna be able to handle it. It's so fucking crazy, darling. Okay, sit. Sit, please. Such a good girl. Oh, my goodness. Come on down here. No, I didn't say nothing. I didn't touch anything. It's okay. Hey, it's still winter time. Why are you shedding the tufts?
I think it's because you're pulling them out.
No. True? Truce? Truce. We got a tough truce. Okay. Oh my god, he broke the truce. You should kill him.